Good sheep. Yeah. All right. I'm making I'm making a mattress, a wool mattress, felted wool mattress. And what I'm doing right now is picking apart the wool in a much less processed. I'm not pulling it apart. Usually, this is what I do. I'll pull out like little bits and make it very fine. And I'm having a hard time even slowing down to what I usually do. This is the first time that I've actually like done this and been like, fuck it, let's do it. Because I know that you can make it a lot less broken apart than this, using the Mongolian method. I had used the Mongolian method with the clothes that I made right before I made JC's mom's vest that's so thick. I was right before I came up with this method of just pulling it apart with your hands. I was trying to figure out how different felting methods that you could use that didn't require those new modern carding combs that have like angled metal teeth in them that you can only get from like a handful of manufacturers in the world. I started studying and I found the Mongolians use a stick like 3 to 4 foot long, and they sit in front of a big pile of wool, and they beat the shit out of it. They don't just beat it. They like, it's like an art. You like whip it, and like you whip it and pull it back, so that it does two things. It beats the dirt, the dried, because you can only do this with really dry wool, either this method or the Mongolian method. You have to like sun dry the crap out of your wool so that it's bone dry, so it makes a ripping sound when you rip it apart. So you beat it with a stick, beat it slash bounce it, whip it, and it knocks the dirt out of it, while simultaneously the stick goes down in the pile of wool, and then when it's whipped back up on the rebound, you gotta like do it on the rebound, otherwise your arms will get tired really quick. You gotta make use of every little bit of efficiency that you can. So you whip it and bounce it and off of the wool, and every time that you pull it up out of the pile, it has like a string of wool, like it's like 4 foot long. The string of wool is, and it's much coarse, much more like this, not as broken apart, and yeah, every time that you beat it, you're knocking out the wood. So every time that you bounce the stick off of it, it's cleaning it while slowly pulling the fibers apart, like what I'm doing, except you're using a stick. The only thing is that you can't get it nearly as broken apart as if you use your fingers. But the Mongolians never used their wool for clothing, or they might have at some point, but that method, from all evidence that I can find online, is that they just used it for their yurts, their yurt covers, and so it didn't need to be abrasion resistant. So the whole point of pulling it apart as fine as you can is that you're bringing all the fibers, they're like locked like this, and you're bringing them all out as much as possible and opening them up, and then you're putting them in a box, and you jostle the box, and then eventually wet it and mash it down and roll it up and mash it some more. And what you're trying to do is get those broken apart fibers to go like this. And if you try to go too fast, then what it does is if you try to go too fast and you don't let them to like settle into each other, then they'll buckle. Is the way I think of it, and then they won't nest as far into each other, and then it won't be as sheer. It won't have as much shear strength pulling it, and if you don't break it apart enough and don't let it settle enough, then the surface won't be as tightly felted and as flat, so it won't be as abrasion resistant. So the Mongolians' roofs, they didn't really care as long as there was enough wool to insulate it, and enough wool so rain would would seep to the edges of their roofs. So I'm doing something in between a Mongolian roof and what my clothes tend to be. And if you use carding combs, that really it makes a even tighter felt than my tightest clothing, which is good for wind resistance, but it's actually worse for providing thermal pockets. The whole point of wool is that it's got little barbs at a microscopic level that prevent it from when it's twisted together into yarn, or when it's felted especially, the fibers aren't able to align themselves with each other as back to back like human hair would be, that has scales more than barbs. And so there's more little microscopic air pockets in between the aligned fibers when you brush them with a comb and they're all aligned. With my method, it's their method. It takes these and it opens them up and then relines them and then felts them tighter than this, but all in the same direction. Whereas these are going vertical. It lays them out all going in the same direction, and then you put different layers going that direction so that it's got shear strength going 90 degrees. And so that method breaks it apart and then puts them back together, aligns them like this into sheets. And my method makes fluffy sheets that are all like this, and then you get them to go together and felt more like this instead of like this. That's the best way I can describe it. The method of carding combs pulls the fibers like vertically, pulls them apart like this, and then it realigns them when you card, and you felt like that method. It realigns them into a tighter, uniform sheet. It's like this, and then they lay layers going across 90 degrees so that it has shear strength going sideways as well. And my method is more like getting the fibers haphazardly to go into each other, and because they're not aligned, they're not flat and right next to each other back to back, with a little bit of because the barbs don't allow for them to be perfectly back to back, there's a little bit of a thermal spaces in between them. With my method being like this, there's a lot more larger, still microscopic though, very small spaces that are thermal pockets that can hold in heat. So this method that I'm doing right here is a lot warmer, but it's not as wind resistant because the wind's able to get through those larger pockets. So if you had like a leather layer over felt, it was like this, I think that'd be the most efficient way to go. And I got this box inside of a pump house, a well pump house. The camera's on top of a well right now, on top of a well pump. And I have my wagon over here because the prevailing winds go this direction, so I got it blocking off the wind that can come in this one side of the pump house that I have this box in. You need to do my felting method in a windless, completely windless, like no breeze at all can get to your shit, because otherwise it'll just not only mess it up at higher wind speeds, but it's just annoying and like unnerving. This is really relaxing and awesome, and you just want to like make sure that you have the optimal environment that makes it as peaceful and enjoyable a process as possible. So do it indoors, or like in a barn or in a garage, or set up some tarps on 3 sides where the wind can come or can come around. You don't need four sides. You don't need 4 walls. You just but three balls is really helpful, or two, I guess you could point the corner of two tarps in the direction the wind comes from, and you could be behind that, and that should work. I'm getting nitpicky. I need to do a rougher job. I'm pulling the wool apart too slowly. I'm starting to like pull it closer to what I do regularly. And all the dirt comes out naturally when it's dry enough. It'll just fall out when you're pulling it apart, or like at least 90% of it. Sheep. It's time to milk. These are really short staples. Very not as much fun. There's a huge difference between these 3-inch staples and 4-inch staples. Longer than 4 inch is fun. It's so awesome and efficient. You're like, when it's less efficient, it's a lot less fun and a lot less noticeable. Your progress. I just said progress. I'm watching too much Jordan Peterson or something. Progress? I think I got that from him. These are really matted too. You really, for this method, box felting, you really need to have like wool that hasn't been stuck in a bag and smashed down. It's alright if they put it in a bag, they fold it up like how a fleece should be, and don't just fucking wad it up. If they fold it up, put it in a trash bag, and they don't smash it down, or like it's not sitting in the back of someone's car jostling around for months, then it'll be a lot easier to pull apart. Assuming that the sheep doesn't have like no shelter options, or not as good as shelter options, so their wool was wet and they had stuff that they like to rub on. Like sheep don't like to rub on fence posts as much as they like to rub on trees. Alright. I'm gonna pick it up and kind of shake it and get the stuff off the bottom. And to lay that layer over another layer, like just make sure they overlap, like 6 inches or so. Rosie, it's milk. Milk, mama. Rosie, Rosie, give me Rosie, give me Rosie. Got lanolin all over my fingers. Give me Rosie. I'm gonna pee. Good girl, come here. Come here, mama. Come here. Good girl, my Rosie. Yeah. You good sheep. Yeah. Time to milk, mama bear. Good sheep. Step over here. Oh. Yeah, you got a lot of milk. Good girl. You got over a half a pint. I'm lucky if I get a cup. You got a cup and a half, maybe 2 cups. Good sheep. Good girl, my Rosie. Yeah. Right. Thank you, Rosie. Yeah. Good sheep. Alright. Done with another small layer. Pick it up. Shake the shit out. Just gonna go over here. I'm gonna start having to flip this thing up. Alright. I got half of it filled with one full layer. It's like this. And I'm gonna lay another layer over that. Overlapping about 6 inches. Yeah. Good sheep. Yeah. Yeah, good sheep. Yeah, good sheep. Yeah, good sheep. Happy! We're over here. That's Happy's noise. She does that many. 1, 2, 3. She does 3 bears. She always does the last one drawn out. It's funny. And sheep have different voices. It's funny. Different ways of talking. Different ways of saying, hey, I want something. That's basically the only thing they have to say. Hey, I want something. I want to know where you're at. I want some food. I want some water. Hey, I want something. Happy! Hi, Happy! Hey, you! Am I happy? Am I happy? Yeah. Good sheep.